Margaret of Scotland was the wife of the King of Scots, Malcolm III. However, Margaret had strong ties with the English crown, being a granddaughter of Edmund Ironside. Those ties would continue to grow even after Margaret died in 1093. Margaret's daughter Edith married the new King of England, Henry I, in late 1100. Here, Edith would change her name to Matilda. Margaret was a religiously devoted woman and known for her good deeds. Her biographer, a bishop named Turgot, who knew Margaret well, is lavish in his praise of Margaret, noting her frequent releasing of English prisoners from Scottish captivity. Even long before the Scottish Wars of Independence, hostilities would break out from time to time between the neighbouring kingdoms of England and Scotland. Indeed, Margaret's own husband, Malcolm, would be killed at the Battle of Alnwick in 1093, shortly before Margaret's own passing. And so Margaret had plenty of opportunity to show her generosity of spirit. Bishop Turgot wrote extensively of Margaret's qualities. The following is an extract of what he wrote regarding Margaret and her treatment of English prisoners of war. But who can tell the number of Englishmen of all ranks carried captive from their own land by violence of war and reduced to slavery, whom Margaret restored to liberty by paying their ransom? Spies were employed by her to go secretly through all the provinces of Scotland and ascertain what captives were oppressed with the most cruel bondage and treated with the greatest inhumanity. When she had privately ascertained where these prisoners were detained and by whom ill treated, commiserating them from the bottom of her heart, Margaret took care to send them speedy help, and she paid their ransom and set them at liberty. Margaret's father was Edward the Exile, who narrowly escaped death as an infant during the reign of King Canute over England. Edward had ended up in exile in Hungary, where his children, including Margaret, had been born. Although Margaret had spent the early years of her childhood in Hungary, her roots were firmly in England. In 1057, Margaret and her family were invited to travel to England by King Edward the Confessor, who was likely to have viewed Margaret's father as a potential candidate to succeed him, given that he had no sons or heirs. When Margaret finally landed in England, it's likely she felt properly at home. Even after her marriage to Malcolm III, Margaret would never forget her roots, and this may well explain her particular kindness to the English prisoners, although her genuine piety is not in doubt either. Margaret would be made a saint in 1250 by Pope Innocent IV.